You need to be able to move
Nice
up
to
the
meet
best
you.
place forward.
Thank you.
Ryan, what's up? Nice to meet you.
Let's go, Chris!
My goal is to now make one video every Sunday. First of all, I'll say that Boston is kind of a hectic, at least during the marathon time, during the Boston Marathon, whole experience. It's kind of a crazy city in terms of traffic and just chaos. Maybe not normally, but when you have all these runners coming from all over, I feel like Boston it's a place that's like built not to handle a lot of people. The roads are like really small. A lot of roads don't have lanes. You just people just know where to go. It's like you race from stoplight to stoplight and you fall into place wherever you want in the lanes. It's like crazy. I Ubered everywhere pretty much, so, wasn't too much of an issue, but like it was scary when I had to drive in Boston. Like I didn't like it. One thing about Boston that's really cool as a city is that they are they have a lot of good sports teams, all in a close vicinity. You have the Bruins, and you have Fenway Park, obviously, the Red Sox, and you also have the Boston Celtics, and all of it is like really close by. So there was one night where I was watching hockey. I was watching, probably the Bruins. I can't remember, honestly. Watching hockey. It was a bar right next to Fenway Park. So the game was going on, Fenway Park, and it was really close. And I was watching the Celtics and the Bulls play. Like all this at one time. It was pretty cool. So everyone in Boston has a lot of like pride in their sports. The whole Paul Revere's ride. I went to his house. I stole a rock outside Paul Revere's house as a souvenir. What else? The Boston Tea Party. I saw that. Stuff. It was kind of cheesy. It was kind of a tourist trap, but it was whatever. I was trying to take in the sights, take in the history. Boston's like one of the old historic, American cities, colonies, whatnot. I don't know. I barely passed American history, so don't ask me about history. So a lot of pubs, drinking, and Italian restaurants. They even had a Samuel Adams 26.2 beer, I guess, just around Boston Marathon season every year. So everyone's excited about that and drinking that. And I had it. I'm not really a beer fan, more of a wine fan. I guess you can call me snobby, but I thought the Samuel Adams 26.2 tasted a lot like Bud Light. The expo at Boston is crazy. If you run Boston, make sure the expo opens at 9 a.m. Make sure you're there at 9 a.m. So yeah, I bought one of these sticks. I think it's just called The Stick. Like, not a very original name, but a great product. It's kind of like foam rolling, except more versatile because you can roll everything, your back, like everything. It's really easy. It's way better than foam rolling. It's kind of annoying. So this is great. I'm glad I got it. Then let's see. They had underwater treadmills that you could try, endless pools, the Boston Marathon official treadmill, all these cool heart rate sensors and all this other biometric stuff. Like, it was awesome. And I got to meet, I met Ryan Hall, and I met Shalane Flanagan. That was cool. Got a picture with them, talk with them a little bit. Me and Ryan shooting the shit. Luckily, I don't think he recognized me, which is probably for the best. And then, they had a cool section where you sit on these bleachers and you watch the Boston Marathon video about, basically, it shows the whole course. Huge projector screen in terms of the race. So I ran a 3:13. Let's just get that out there. My PR is a 2:48. So I ran 25 minutes slower than my PR. Now, you may ask why. Because I did the Boston Hype video. I'm in shape. I'll tell you what, I am in better shape than when I ran the 2:48. I shit you not. But what I failed to account for, which is kind of interesting because like the Boston Marathon was so important to me and so important to a lot of runners. Like, it's interesting that we can overlook critical factors. One is the variable weather. Last year in Boston was really hot. Some years it's really cold. Some years it's rainy. The forecast said mid-60s with a tailwind and partially cloudy. And I thought, a little hotter than I want, but overall great conditions, right? Well, it didn't turn out that way because one, it was not partially cloudy. There was no cloud cover, so the sun was beating down on us. That was a negative. There was a tailwind, but a lot of the race, you're in big packs. It was really crowded, which I'm not complaining about. But I mean, when you're in a big pack, it's like if there's a tailwind, I mean, you're not gonna feel it because you're in a big pack. And also tailwind can make you hotter because you don't get any actual wind. I mean, if there was headwind, I'd complain about headwind. If there was tailwind, I'll complain about being extra hot because no wind in my face. So either way, I'm gonna complain. Another thing I didn't really account for was the course. Oh my God, there's so many downhills. I mean, it's ridiculous. I trained uphills and I increased my mileage and I did 5 20-mile runs, 20 to 21-mile runs. You know, I put in a lot of training. I was in what I want to call marathon shape, but I wasn't in Boston marathon shape. There's a difference. This race kicked my ass. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I probably got an hour of sleep because I was so excited, and it didn't matter. That didn't affect me, but I was just kind of, you know, it was weird. And the 10 a.m. start too. That threw me off because every race, usually most marathons are like at 6 in the morning and it's like partially dark when you start. So even when I did the Honolulu Marathon in Hawaii, they go, oh, that's a really hot race. Well, maybe, but the first like 8 miles was in the dark. So by the time it gets hot, you're over halfway done, you know? So it's not that bad. This race wasn't mid-60s. It was mid-70s at the start at 10 a.m. And then by, I don't know exactly when, but at mile 6, my girlfriend that was the first time she saw me in the race, and she said it was mid-80s. And then as you run into Boston, it gets a little cooler, so it might have been like 70 degrees in Boston. It wasn't as hot in Boston the last 5 miles or whatever, but overall I was baked. And when you take into account, you think, okay, I probably should have done more downhill training because my legs were shot by the halfway mark. But also the heat training, it's really hard to do heat training if you live in a cold climate. I felt bad for all the Boston natives that ran the race. But the thing is, like in California, it's the first time I've trained for a marathon while I lived in California. And this whole winter, it's been cold. So all my runs have been at 7:30 in the morning, all my long runs, 7:30 in the morning, and it's been, 50 something degrees. That's perfect running weather. So I was in great shape for perfect weather. But, add 20 degrees, 30 degrees at some points to that, and it's a totally different race. And you don't have the same fitness in that heat. Being heat acclimated you can't underestimate the training and preparation you need to be, ready for the heat. And I didn't adjust my time goals when I knew it was hot. I started the race off like I would anyway, even if it was 50 degrees. That was stupid too. Because I was like, oh, I came here to PR. I wrote on this board at the expo where you can write like stuff, like in Sharpie. I was like, PR or the ER? Like, the stupidest quote. Like, that's like a reckless way of thinking. Anyway, so I basically did the first 15K at like, 6:20 pace. And I was on pace. And I wasn't really trying. I felt like the whole race, there wasn't a single point where I was pushing it. The problem was I noticed that partially because it's hot and I didn't adjust my pace, I went out probably faster than I should have because of the heat. I was having problems breathing. And part of it was, obviously, if you run in the heat and you're not used to it, you're going to have trouble breathing because you're overheating. Your body's like, panicking or whatever, you know. But also, you know, I do have asthma, and I'm not making the excuse or anything, but my asthma is worse in the heat. You know, I feel like the heat may have exacerbated my asthma a little bit. I don't want to use that as an excuse. We can just say the heat, you know, we don't have to say the asthma thing, but, you know, either way, at 15K, I'm like, I can't really breathe very well. And I have to hold this the whole way for 42 whatever K. I was like, shit. So after 10 miles, I pulled back on the reins a little bit and started running, you know, 640 pace or whatever. But I knew the hills were coming at mile 16. I knew you know, I was gonna, you know, blow up. And then at halfway, I went 124.20, which is a 2:48.40, which is just behind my PR. So I was like, it's over. Like, that's when I just said, fuck it. I'm not gonna be able to do this. And after that, I just focused on drinking and hydrating and just trying, not looking at my watch, and just trying to just get to the end. However I could, not worrying about my time, just get to the end. Because at this point, I know I'm not going to PR. It just wasn't a day to PR. Even at halfway, my legs were pretty shot from all the downhills. And yeah, everything was just in critical mode. And I was running so slow. And then at mile 23, I stopped to walk. I can honestly say that this is the first time, my 4th marathon, it's the first time I've ever walked in a marathon. It was, you know, I was feeling dizzy, probably dehydrated, even though I was drinking. And it's just one of those things where, like, sure, I could go out and I could run an hour in the heat without training for it and be fine. But how often do you start a run where it's high 70s or whatever, and you do it for 3+ hours, you know, like without stopping? Like, I feel like an hour is fine, but then after that you want to stop, but you can't. In a marathon, you got to keep going. So that's why my pace just went to shit. I'm just like, oh my god. At mile 23, I really thought I wanted to drop out, to be honest. But I thought, well, you know, this is Boston. Like, I don't care if someone has to, well, I'm not going to be picked up and finished because that's cheating, but I don't care if I have to crawl to the end. Like, I'm going to just at least make it and get my finisher medal and say I did Boston and maybe never come back, but like, just finish it, you know? And I started thinking about, well, if I do, through 23 miles, I was still sub-7 the whole way, like overall. But after that, I started walking, I started running 9s, it was over. But I thought, if I do under a 3:15, which I'm not proud of, but it's an automatic time qualifier for Chicago. Not this year, it's too late, but next year. And I thought about it, Chicago's flat. I don't want any hilly marathons. Marathons are hard enough. Why do you need to throw hills in there? I want something that's flat and then fast. And Chicago, I mean, the weather is variable, but it's late in the year. So it'll be hot in California during that time, so I can actually heat train. So I think I'd be more prepared for a race like Chicago to do well. My last marathon, I ran 2:48, and I qualified for Boston. I was fortunate. Because it was perfect weather. And yes, I had to deal with muscle soreness and hitting the wall and everything, but at least the weather was good. So it was one less thing I had to fight off. And it just was too much for me. It really was. And a lot of slow people beat me, you know? And a lot of fast people choked. Everyone's affected differently in the heat. A lot of it could be body weight. Obviously the training where you live, how you approach the race with your strategy, how you change your strategy based on the conditions. All this comes into play. And case in point, you know, I'm just happy I finished. I was in the medical tent afterward. It sucks. I don't care if you run a 2-hour marathon or a 5-hour marathon. It's just as hard. It really is, because you're out there longer. So I don't feel, it's been 6 days since the marathon. I'm still sore. I ran like 4.5 miles yesterday. That's all I could do. So it's like, no matter how slow I ran, it still hurt just as much. So I'm a little bit discouraged, to be honest. You know, I wasn't expecting that kind of Boston experience, but I had fun on the trip. I'm just a little sour about the race itself. So my dad like bought, you know, my race photos, posted them on Facebook, and I'm like, Dad, burn them. I don't want any record of those. Tips for other people in the future would be, first of all, the race starts at 10 a.m. for the first wave, and they make you take shuttles in Boston at 6 a.m. That's ridiculous. So what I did, and what you should do if you go to Boston, is stay near the start, which is in Hopkinton. Stay over there. It's like a half-hour drive, and you'll be able to, you know, basically I got dropped off. My hotel had a shuttle, but my girlfriend dropped me off. They drive you to, I stayed in Doubletree, which is in Framingham, like really close to Hopkinton. So I got driven to Hopkinton State Park, and then from there, they had a shuttle for runners that went to the start. So 5-minute drive to the state park, 5-minute drive to the start, boom, I'm there. Anyway, really cool, great history, but I will say that I probably will never do Boston again. If I do, it's only to conquer my demons because I did so shitty. But in terms of like desire to actually do it for fun, I did not like the course. It was a hot day. If the conditions were good, I still don't think I would do it because the course, just too many downhills. I didn't like it. And then, yeah, that's just my opinion. But I think obviously you should do it once because of what it means as runners, as an accomplishment, as a milestone in your career. And if you guys have any other questions, you can post a comment or message me.